The construction inspector has three main industries to choose from, and they all have the same challenges. And they present huge opportunities to a very profitable career if you're willing to apply yourself. Now I'm talking $80,000 plus a year and more like $100,000 a year with no student loans. And work is 50 to 70 hours a week, and it pays much better than watching TV. The industries are residential, and they include houses and small apartments. Think building inspector, concrete tester, electrical inspector, home warranty inspector, or FEMA inspector. And some of the crafts are carpenter, concrete, electrician, and HVAC. Now, commercial includes office buildings, wastewater treatment plants, water plants, food processing facilities, airports, and textile plants. And these include all crafts and all craft inspectors. Then we have heavy industrial, such as refinery, LNG facilities, power plants, shipbuilding, pipelines, oil field, bridges, ethanol plants, mining, steel manufacturing. And these include all crafts and include all craft inspectors. I prefer heavy industrial because these projects last longer and usually have a higher pay. Now, the four main necessities for modern civilization include food, water, shelter, and clothing. Now, residential and commercial construction directly provide these four main necessities. However, heavy industrial provides the energy and the feedstock to support residential and commercial building activities, along with many other attributes. The inspector's job is to ensure engineering design is followed by the craft workers in workmanship and materials. And the inspector's required experience and qualifications will depend upon the industry. Some skills, experience, and qualifications are used in all three industries and some are not. Today we're going to focus on the heavy industrial inspector. Follow along to learn more. Residential, commercial, and heavy industrial construction have inspectors to ensure quality, and this ensures customer satisfaction while ensuring also the end product performs as designed. Now, the client and the contractor will determine the number and the type of inspectors, as well as their required experience and qualifications. And this video does not address all possible inspector positions. As an example, every part of this refinery has the materials inspected to a specific standard and the installation to a specific client specification. Before we get started, let's see what Mike Rowe has to say on the skilled crafts and the open positions, since construction inspectors usually come from the skilled crafts. And this is when he was on the Clay Travis and the Buck Sexton show. Link in the description below.
You can't ignore the big trends. You can't ignore 10 million open positions right now. You can't ignore, you want to hear some really horrible math? The number that scares me more than 1.7 trillion in student loans is 5. Every year, for every 5 tradesmen who retire, 2 replace them. Now that's been going on for over a decade. And when you start to just extrapolate that out, what you realize real fast is this is not just a conversation about companies who are struggling to recruit talent or kids who are struggling to find a path to prosperity. This is a conversation about how long Clay Travis and Buck Sexton want to wait for a plumber when they need one, or an electrician. Every single person listening to this has skin in the game because every one of your audience members shares my addiction to smooth roads and affordable electricity and indoor plumbing and a long list of other stuff that we've been taking for granted long before Dirty Jobs went on the air.
Next, let's look at the U.S. birth rate decline, and I'll have the link in the description below. All right, let's look at some data real quick for the CDC going up to the year 2022. And as you can see, we're at the lowest birth rate since 1957, with only 56.1 births per 1,000 women aged 15 to 44. So in addition to having fewer people entering into the skilled trades, we also as a nation have a lower birth rate. So we really need to focus on the youth being interested in knowing about the skilled trades. Now let's review some recent articles, and I'll have the link in the description below. Now here's an article on Construction Drive titled Supply Chain Headaches Persist 4 Years into the Pandemic, and it's dated February 29, 2024. The author says, for U.S. construction firms, prices remain high due to ongoing material shortages and high costs of logistics and labor, while global conflicts are adding in a new level of volatility and risk. Indeed, construction input costs are up 38.7% compared with February of 2020. And supplies of nickel ore in Indonesia, the largest global producer of nickel, which is used to make stainless steel, could be depleted within 6 years, according to the Indonesia Nickel Mining Association. Meanwhile, demand for nickel is increasing because it's used in electric vehicle battery production. The construction industry and stainless steel manufacturers will have to compete with EV producers for the same supply of nickel. And then lengthy lead times. In addition to paying more for some products and materials, contractors are also waiting longer for them to be delivered. Pre-pandemic, materials such as steel and timber could be had within 2 to 4 weeks. Today, these same materials can take 12 to 16 weeks to arrive. And that's really adding to the substitute or non-compliant materials being incorporated because you can't get what the EOR is specifying, so they're trying to use alternate materials. Business Journal, and it's entitled Navigate Construction's Most Prevalent Challenges by Embracing the Change. And this was authored by Chris Grant, Project Director of Brinkman Constructors, on April 29, 2024. And Chris goes on to say, one of the most widely known issues faced by the construction industry is the need for skilled labor. Very true. And he goes on to say it's also important to retain the process, insight, and knowledge of the retiring generation and ensure this information is accessible to future project teams and leaders. So both the skill craft and the project leadership need to retain these lessons learned over the years. He goes on to say, although we are years past the COVID-19 pandemic, supply chain issues and material shortages continue to impact the current economy. Global disruptions, including supply chain issues, geopolitical tensions, and increased demand, have led to scarcities in essential construction materials such as steel, lumber, and concrete. Then he rounds it out to say that to mitigate the impact of these issues, industry leaders must rethink procurement strategies, consider alternative materials, and solidify partnerships with reliable vendors. Well, let's just walk this back here. Reliable vendors. So vendors are only selling what the manufacturers provide them. So if production is down, the vendors are not going to have it. And alternative materials, all materials must be approved by the engineering of record. If not, then there are substitute materials or non-compliant materials being incorporated. And the job of the inspector is to make sure that non-compliant materials are not incorporated into the final product. Let's take a moment to look at two graphs, and I'll have the description in the links below. So as you can see, the steel production for many countries has been going down for 20 years, including the United States. And if you have a Buy American Act clause in your contract, this limits your availability on things such as pipes, fittings, valves, plate steel, structural steel beams, bolts, and the list goes on. And from this graph that goes to 2023, you can see that the United States production has gone down yet again 2.1% year over year. However, some countries are doing rather well, such as this last one, which has gone up 117% year over year. Inspector positions that typically do not require qualification are your structural steel inspectors, electrical inspectors, mechanical fixed equipment and rotating equipment inspectors, and your civil inspectors. However, do not confuse the civil inspector with a third-party testing contractor, and they're certified by their testing company. Now, certifications that will help you land an inspector position include welding inspector provided by the American Welding Society or the ASNT TC1A certification, and this is typically provided by NDE companies to their technicians for weld inspection. Next would be the coating inspection. Now that's the NACE CIP Level 2, and that's provided by AMPP and NACE. And this is the fastest way to enter the inspection career field, along with the NDE companies. Additional certifications would be the pressure vessel inspector, which is the API 510, above ground storage tank inspector, API 653, and the piping inspector, the API 570. And I'll have the links to all these organizations in the description below. Now, the most valuable dual certification for projects for inspectors is the AWS-CWI and having the NACE CIP Level 2, the AMPP Certified Coating Inspector. Now, these inspectors are sought after for their project staffing versatility, and QC managers will typically keep these dual certified inspectors to the very end. Now, the more certifications you can stack up, the more the employers will be looking for you. Now, I have the AWS Senior CWI, API 510, API 653, API 570, NACE CIP Level 2, and API Source Inspector Fixed Equipment. And these certifications allowed me to work on projects from $20 million all the way to $5 billion as a client QA rep, as well as a contractor quality control manager and a contractor quality assurance manager. If you want to really understand the topic of quality, research Edward Deming. He is a pioneer in quality. And he once said, "You cannot inspect quality into a product. You must build quality into a product. Once the product is built, the quality, whether good or bad, is already there." Now, top management does not know how big the job of quality is. Otherwise, quality training for craft project workers would be as common as safety training. And it's very common to have required safety training before workers can start a job. But I have not seen quality training before craft workers start a job ever. Remember, we're having 50,000 workers monthly or bi-monthly being replaced by 20,000 workers. Let's cover the 3 most common quality problems impacting all industries. And this is from my experience on $20 million projects to $5 billion projects as an inspector, contractor quality control manager with 80 field inspectors, contractor quality assurance manager, and a client QA representative. The number 1 problem is staffing. And this was covered with Mike Rowe's discussion and covers all industries. So for every 5 retiring skilled trades, only 2 new workers are starting in the skilled trades. Then we have the declining birth rates, which will have even a bigger impact in the future. Now, skilled trade craft workers are required to maintain or build new, and without this we are done as an industrialized country. Lack of skilled and knowledgeable workers means fewer qualified and experienced multidisciplined inspectors. Now, I don't know a skilled tradesman or inspector working heavy industrial in the field that is making less than $1,500 a week, and most are making around $2,200 a week. Number 2 quality problem to construction is substitute materials. So material that is not per the engineering design, and this includes items such as wrong grade or thickness of steel for pipes, fittings, and beams, wrong valve trim, wrong paint, wrong concrete mix being delivered to site, items from prohibited countries when there's a Buy American Act clause in the contract. And this all stems from lack of qualified workers and lack of quality training, and also reference problem number 1. The number 3 quality problem is products not installed per design, and this covers, again, all industries. And it's items such as not constructed to design dimensions for length, height, plumb, level, and square, or on a design slope, missing or wrong components, procedures not being followed, wrong or insufficient non-destructive testing. And again, this is connected to problem 1 and 2 previously discussed. We as a country need knowledgeable and experienced skilled craft workers and mentors to remain an industrialized country. So consider a career in the skilled trades and becoming an exceptional quality inspector. And I'll cover quality documentation in another video.